Hello, friends, and welcome to Page Chewing Comics and Manga, Episode 6. We're churning along. So, thanks for tuning in. For those of you who are new to the show, each week I pick about 5 different books and I go through them trying to find some books to read. I was a big comic book fan and I took some time off and I'm returning to the world of comics. So, I'm trying to find some books that resonate with me, that I can enjoy. I'm usually not too big on the superhero stuff, but I find myself reading more superhero stuff lately for some reason, but we'll get into that in a minute. But I'm trying to find some books, so I will go through the pulls I had this week and whether or not I'll be continuing with the series. So I just kind of go and pick some number ones or some books I can jump onto. I'm a completionist, so it's really hard for me just to grab a book and go with it and not know what's happening. So I have to start at the beginning of an arc or another time so I can jump on and feel like I know what's happening, because I'm weird like that. So let's go ahead and get into the books. And after my rant last week about Night Terrors and how disappointing it was for me, I ended up picking up 2 Night Terrors books this week. I had heard that Action Comics has been good lately, and Detective Comics is one that I used to read a lot, and I've been reading now before the event started. So I did pick up Action Comics 1. For those who don't know, it's Power Girl, and there's 2 different characters, 2 different stories, 2 different creative teams. The first story is Power Girl. The second one is the Super Twins. Now for Power Girl, the writer is Leah Williams, and the art by Vasco Georgiev. I hope I'm not mispronouncing the name. And Super Twins is by Philip Kennedy Johnson and art by Miko Sueyan. So I hope I'm not butchering anyone's name. But the first story is Power Girl versus herself, basically. And I've heard a lot of people complain, not complain in a bad way, but mention or provide feedback that the artwork isn't matching the theme, because Night Terrors is more of a horror theme and the artwork isn't reflecting the horror in it. And it makes sense to me, but in this first story, I found myself really enjoying kind of the cleaner artwork, very kind of typical superhero stuff. But I did like that the artwork didn't quite fit the story. It felt out of place, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable, which I think is good for horror, because you want it to make you uncomfortable. You want it to be horror, and the artwork didn't fit the story, and that made it felt more out of place, and it felt more unnerving, I guess. Unfortunately, the story didn't work for me. I'm not a big Power Girl fan. I don't really know what's happening. So it didn't really work. For Super Twins, Cyborg Superman is in their nightmares. And those of you who don't know, for Night Terrors, there's a villain, Insomnia, that is putting everyone to sleep, and everyone's in their nightmares. So these are the nightmares that these heroes are having. So yeah, these stories just fell flat for me, and they didn't feel like they were connected to the bigger story. And for me, if we're gonna have an event, I kind of feel like every story should matter. Like every story should fit into the larger story. Everything should kind of tie in at least a little bit. These feel almost like standalones. At least, I mean, I don't know for sure, but they don't feel like they have a lot of weight, they don't feel like they really fit into the bigger story, and that's kind of disappointing. So Night Terrors Action Comics just didn't really work for me. Didn't have too good of a time, but I'm glad I tried it. Wanted to give it a shot. So unfortunately, like I said, kind of fell flat. Now the second one is Night Terrors Detective Comics 1. This is written by Dan Waters and art by Ricardo Federici, excuse me. Now, I read this right after I read Action Comics, and I kind of went into Night Terrors Detective Comics 1 with low expectations. I thought, I don't know why I bought this. After renting about it last week, I'm going to talk about this on the podcast after ranting and raving about Night Terrors, and here I am, the sucker that I am, picking up 2 Night Terrors books. Now, with my expectations really low, I thought I'll give it a shot. I already bought it. And this one was very good. This one really worked for me. I love the artwork. The artwork has like a painterly feel to it. It felt The colors are very muted, very kind of dark, and it really worked for me. I mentioned earlier the kind of the neater artwork in the Power Girl story. It fit, it was unnerving because it didn't fit with the story, and it kind of felt out of place, and it kind of felt like this villain is intruding on this other world that doesn't quite belong there. And this one, the artwork really leans into the horror feel of it, and wow, did it work. I loved it. Basically, it's Jim Gordon, trying to save Gotham, and they expand the story quite a bit. I'm not sure if these characters and these villains will fit into the larger story or not. But after reading number one, I don't care because I really like what they're building here. Gordon finds a ritual, and there's lots and lots of he finds some creatures that were summoned, and it kind of gets into different dimensions and time, and lots of great stuff going on here. I really love what they're doing with it. This was almost my pick of the week. I really liked it. It's I know some people thought this was like a slow book, like it didn't really have a lot of action, but that's what I loved about it. It leaned into the more of the emotional horror, the more of the quiet horror, the grief horror. I'm a sucker for grief horror, and it felt slow, and it felt like it was developing things. It wasn't just people punching their nightmares or figuring out what's going on in 2 minutes. It really worked for me. It goes into Gordon's history, his family history, people he's lost along the way, and even though these are things that we've seen before, it gave it an emotional weight. Like it felt like there's some weight to it. Like Gordon, you feel his pain, and I'm not a huge Gordon expert. I don't know about his whole history, but wow, did it really work? The story has almost like a Hellraiser feel to it. Some of the villains that they introduce, or I don't know if this is their introduction or not, but for me it has like a Hellraiser feel to it. It kind of leans into like I don't want to say Lovecraftian, but it leans into like a Dark City type of feel. For those of you who know Dark City, the movie from the early mid-90s maybe, but it has that, like there's something larger going on. There's something bigger, and it leans into these really great themes and ideas, really plays with it, and I really, really enjoyed it. It has a very wide scope to it. I love that they're branching out and not just people punching each other. I think that was really great. I really loved it. I love this one. It was really close to being my pick of the week. Really, really close. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm wondering if it should have been, but I really enjoyed it. I'll be reading the second one and finding out what's going on and how the story wraps up. But the horror, there is some horror moments in it. There's some pretty, it's for the visuals in it. Really do some heavy lifting. The artwork does a great job of conveying that horror feel to it. I mean, really enjoyed it. I was surprised after reading Action Comics, but pleasantly surprised. Even though going in with low expectations, I walked away wanting more from that one. I want the issue now. I want issue 2 now. And yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by Night Terrors Detective Comics 1. Really great stuff. Loved it. Now the next book is World Tree number 4. This is by James Tynion IV, art by Fernando Blanco and Jordi Belair. Now, in this story, we continue to learn more about the Undernet, about what this other, this wider idea that they're trying to develop. The Undernet. We learn more about that. We learn more about, we start to get teased on where it came from, what it is, what it can mean for the future, if we have a future. And we develop, there's some more characters, more of the histories. We learn more about their interpersonal relationships, their histories, what happened in the past, how it ties into now. And we also have there's a body count in this one. I was surprised that we had characters die that I kind of wanted to learn more about. So I did have a fun one. Did have a fun time with this one. The team that is being brought in that originally discovered it, we're getting bits and pieces of what happened when they discovered it. What is it all about? And then we're kind of tied into now what's happening now. But yeah, I think it's enough for me to keep reading. I'm not crazy about it, but I like some of the ideas they're playing with, and I like kind of the story we're trying to develop. And it is, you don't want to know everything at once. You want to keep asking yourself questions. You don't want it to be a huge info dump and know what's happening in a couple issues. So I do like the rate that we're learning about the Undernet, and we do learn about what happens in that world, in that dimension, or whatever it is. We learn about what happens there, what it can mean for you if you end up there, and some pretty great visuals on that to get a peek of what it looks like there, and what it can do to you if you stay there too long. We also learn more about the naked woman who has been walking around killing everybody. We start to learn more about her and where she came from, and possibly how she came to be what she is now. So start to get a feel for all those things. We're learning more about it. I really like that there's a reveal at the end that I thought that was good. In the story like this that you're starting to learn, there's an idea that we're getting teased with. You want a little bit, give us just a little bit just to keep us going. I don't want to know everything. I just want it to be kind of like a slow reveal. I want to. That's what makes these stories memorable, is the waiting and learning about it, like in a drips and drips. So yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not blown away by it. I'm not crazy about it, but it's enough for me to keep reading. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'll keep reading World Tree. I think it's some neat ideas they're playing with. Now the next one, and by the way, World Tree 4 is by Image Comics. The next one is The Ribbon Queen, and this is by AWA Comics, and this is by Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows. Now, I have to say, before I get into this comic, I'm a huge Garth Ennis fan. I'm a huge Jason Burrows fan. Jason Burrows is my favorite artist. Garth Ennis is probably my favorite writer. Yeah, when I saw both of their names on it, this was an auto buy for me. I don't care what it's about. Just give it to me. Shut up and take my money. And I just want to read it because it's them. So this story starts. I had no idea what this was about. I just knew who the creative team was. This book starts out as a whodunit, kind of like who's behind some murders that are taking place, how it ties into potential police corruption. We start off with, okay, who's killing these people, why, and when you get into the corruption part of it, you start to find, it's kind of that old thing where, if your hands aren't dirty, then the cops won't trust you. If you're the police force and your hands aren't dirty, you can't be trusted. Kind of, everyone has dirt on them. Everyone has something that would take them down because they're all guilty in some way. All of them have some kind of history. All of them have done something bad. So everyone has leverage on each other. You can't, unless your hands are totally clean, you can't go and sniff out corruption when they can bring you down with them. And I really like that. I think that was great, and it was done in a way that seemed real to me. It seemed like this is something that can happen, and it kind of ties into, like crime movies and other crime stories that I really enjoy. And so I think it did that really well, and it also has a twist at the end, a little bit of a twist, for me not knowing what it's about at all. It was anyway. That I really liked, didn't expect, so caught me by surprise, but I am on board with this one. I think this is going to be fun. Now, in the synopsis for this one, it talks about, some real life political stuff, and I don't typically enjoy stuff that incorporates real life politics, that kind of so on the nose that it pulls things from the headlines and puts it in their book. I'd rather it be just a something that's imaginary, this imaginary problem in their world. But when it gets too close to reality, it takes me out of the story, And then it kind of, because we're all inundated with news all the time, it's hard to escape that stuff. And sometimes reading about those real life events in a book takes me out of the story, because then I start thinking about other things, and it's too close. So I'm typically not a big fan of that. I don't like real world politics being interwoven with the comic book story. I think there's other ways to do it without it being so on the nose. That's the only thing I really wasn't crazy about, and the rest of it was great. The artwork was great. I love Jason Burrows. It fits for this kind of story very well. And even with it kind of diving into real world stuff, I still thought it was effective and it was good. I just hope that if they are going to incorporate real world stuff, like like stuff out of the headlines and recent political stuff, if they're going to use it, I hope that they use it. That there's a purpose for it, not just to name drop and to mention real world events to make some kind of statement. If you want to do that, that's fine, but make it part of the story. Make it have weight and meaning without it being too on the nose. Because I think, for me, the stories that are more effective, if there's an idea that you want to convey, it's more effective to me when you do it in a subtle way. So when I go back and I think about the story and I start to digest it, then it kind of dawns on me what's really happening and what they may or may not be saying. And that to me is more interesting and more effective than it being so on the nose. So I hope it doesn't get to that point, but just wanted to mention that there are some things mentioned in this issue. So hopefully it's not something that's too leaned on too heavily, that doesn't have a purpose. But obviously I'll be reading this one. I will continue with the Ribbon Queen. Looking forward to issue 2 and see what they do with it. I think it's an 8 issue series. So yeah, I'm encouraged. I think it's going to be good. I hope. Fingers crossed. So for my pick of the week, this week was one that I catching up on. I had heard about this book, and it's on issue 2. I've heard about how great it was. So I went and I picked up issue 1. I thought, well, I'm going to catch up with the series, find out what's going on, because I can't start in the middle or even issue 2. I have to start on issue 1. So I went back, read issue 1, got into issue 2, and I really loved it. I think this is really great. My pick of the week is You've Been Cancelled, number 2. This is by Mad Cave Studios. It's written by Kurt Pyers and Kevin Castorino. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, Kevin, if you're listening. Now, this book is basically okay. So in the future, now we have this discourse online. People get canceled, but in the future we get kind of tired of that, and it becomes a thing where if you get canceled, then you're featured on like a kind of like a Running Man reality TV show kind of thing, where you're terminated, basically. Like, people are hired to go and kill you, and you get canceled forever. There's no chance of renewal. You're not going to get brought back on Netflix. That's it. So yeah, it's basically Running Man for canceled people, and the Running Man references are pretty heavy. So if you're a fan of Running Man, you'll probably catch a few things. For this one, like I said, discourse and violence, we keep ramping up, and where does it stop? I mean, it's going to lead to something like this. This is in the future. The artwork, I'm typically not a big fan of the artwork. It's a little scratchy. The style typically doesn't work for me, but it really grew on me. But halfway through issue 1, I was like, I really dig this art. It really fit the story. It felt like it really worked, and I started becoming a fan of the artwork. I typically don't enjoy it. One of the things that I thought the artist did a really great job with was the action scenes. I'm not a big fan of action scenes, but the different, on the panels, it really tells a story of what's happening without it being just a big splash page of all this action going on. So you do see step by step what's happening, and I thought those action scenes were really well done, really fast paced. They really did a great job with that. Now the story follows Roland. Now Roland is one of these people who are hired to kill people who are canceled on this streaming show or whatever. So Roland is one of these people who gets to kill these canceled people, and obviously he's made a name for himself. He's ruthless. He has a history of violence before, and he is good at his job, and he enjoys it, and he enjoys all the fame and fortune that comes with it. Unfortunately, in issue 2, something goes wrong, and he becomes the target in issue 2. And I won't get into how that all happens, but the way that it happens, you imagine it being a certain way, and it is turned on its head, and it's not at all what you're expecting it to be. But when the corporate overlords see that there's a chance here for, when he becomes a target, and everyone's tuning in to see what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, the corporate overlords at Canceled, who, the company that has this TV show, the streaming show, they pounce on the idea because it's getting better ratings. So it's all about the ratings. It's all about the attention, and they're happy about what's happening. So Roland becomes the hunted, and it's funny to see those roles get reversed and what he does, how he reacts, what he does. Like, so the artwork I really enjoyed. The action scenes were really great. But what really shines for me in this book is the humor. There's some great humor, and humor is tough. I mean, humor is tough to pull off. I'm pretty picky about humor in books, in comics, and just, the written word. But wow, did it really work here? And I found myself laughing out loud, putting the book down a few times. There's some really funny moments in this one. Really, it's just kind of crude humor, I guess, and really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny to see these people being canceled for things, and you have this really crude humor in it, kind of this not exactly politically correct humor in this one. But I really enjoyed it. It was really funny. I liked the artwork. I liked the idea behind the story. It reminded me of a book called Birthday Treat by Anthony Self, who is kind of similar, kind of a similar setup of this story. So I really like those types of dystopian stories when, where does this end? Where does our thirst for, for social media discourse and violence, where does that thirst end? Where does it lead us? What does it mean about us? Kind of turns a mirror on us and is, okay, well, where does this end? Where will we be satisfied? What's next? Keep ramping up the temperature. Where do we go from there? So yeah, You've Been Canceled, number 2. Really great stuff. Really enjoyed it. That one and Detective Comics 1 were the standouts for me. But overall, solid week, other than Action Comics. But yeah, issue 1 of You've Been Canceled is also very good. But this week was You've Been Canceled 2, so it's my pick of the week. And it's a pretty good week. Just a heads up that in 2 weeks I'll be traveling, and I won't have the episode up on time. I'll be traveling to Houston, but the show will be a little bit late that week. Just a heads up. But I will have the episode out a little bit late, but better late than never, hopefully. I also had a couple of interviews I posted this week, and some more discussions. So keep your ears peeled for that if you are a fan of that. If you'd like to connect with me, the best place is on pagechewing.com. You can visit our blog there. We have lots of great contributors there, and you can also visit our forums. Just click the link and register and come and say hello. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get feedback. It is a little weird being on a podcast and not having feedback. So I'm used to YouTube where you have comments and all that stuff. So it's a little strange. But if you'd like to provide feedback, recommend books, if you want to read a book with me and discuss it on the podcast, get in touch. Let me know. I would love to hear from you. So I hope you all had a great week. If I do end up talking to you, let me know what your pick of the week was, what you enjoyed this week. And I'd love to hear from you if you'd like to do that. So thank you for listening. I always appreciate it. The podcast is going on episode 6, and I'm having a lot of fun. So those of you who are listening, I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great week. Hope you're all doing well, and happy reading, and we'll talk to you very soon. Take care.